The boardroom on the 40th floor of Sterling Dynamics smelled like leather and desperation. 12 board members sat frozen around the mahogany table, their eyes locked on the projection screen where bank transfers scrolled in damning green text. At the head of the table, Arthur Kane smoothed his silk tie with trembling fingers, his face the color of old ash. At the opposite end, Victoria Sterling looked small, defeated. Her hands folded in her lap, knuckles bone white against the polished wood. The motion is on the floor. Arthur's voice carried the faux sympathy of a predator savoring its kill. To remove Serafina Sterling as CEO due to gross misconduct and negligence. We have the photographs. We have the falling stock prices. It is, I'm afraid, regrettable. The double doors didn't open. They exploded inward with a crack like a gunshot. Every head turned. Standing in the doorway was a black man in his late 30s, wearing jeans and a soaking wet hoodie that clung to his shoulders. Rain dripped from his close-cropped hair onto the imported carpet, and holding his hand, clutching a stuffed rabbit with one stitched ear, was a 7-year-old girl in a bright yellow raincoat. Security. Arthur stood, his chair scraping backward. Who let this man in? The man's voice was calm, quiet. The kind of quiet that made people lean forward to listen. I let myself in, and I brought the SEC with me. They're downstairs right now, seizing your server room. His dark eyes met Arthur's pale ones across 30 feet of stunned silence, but I told them to give me 5 minutes first. He walked into the room like he owned it. 72 hours earlier, the coffee in Marcus Cole's mug had been cold for 3 hours. It sat on his desk like a pool of black sludge, mirroring the state of his soul. The clock on his monitor read 4:17 a.m. Outside the bay window of his cramped rental on Queen Anne Hill, Seattle rain punished the roof in relentless rhythm. Not a gentle patter, a rhythmic assault that seeped into bones and made a man wonder if the sun had simply given up on the Pacific Northwest. Inside, the only light came from dual monitors casting his face in sickly blue. Lines of code blurred together. Go. Rust. Encryption protocols for a merger he no longer cared about. Daddy. The voice was small, scratchy, terrifying. Marcus spun his chair. The wheels caught on the worn rug. Maya stood in the doorway, flushed crimson, clutching Mr. Hops to her chest, and the stuffed rabbit's remaining ear hung by a thread. Little bit. He was beside her in 2 strides, dropping to one knee. What's wrong, honey? Bad dream. Her voice rasped like sandpaper. My throat hurts. And it's hot. He pressed the back of his hand to her forehead. She was burning. 103 degrees. Easy. The 3rd time this month. Panic spiked cold and familiar in his chest. His phone buzzed on the desk. Then again. And again. A relentless vibration rattling against oak veneer. He glanced at the screen. Victoria Sterling, CEO. Where is the encryption key for the Vanguard port? Victoria Sterling, CEO, Miller. If this isn't uploaded by 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, the deal dies. Victoria Sterling, CEO. Answer me. Marcus looked at his phone. He looked at his daughter whimpering into his shoulder, a heat radiating through his t-shirt like she was made of coals. He thought about the last 3 years. Since Sarah died in that car accident on I-5, he'd been running a marathon at sprint speed. Lid systems architect at Sterling Dynamics. Good money. Health insurance. Lucky. He'd missed Maya's first ballet recital because of a server crash. Missed the parent-teacher conference because Victoria Sterling needed a Sunday debrief. He paid a nanny he barely trusted $2,400 a month. More than his rent, just so he could work 18-hour days for a woman who looked at employees like malfunctioning toasters. "Daddy, the phone is loud. I know, baby. I know." He carried her to her room, tucked her in, administered Tylenol with shaking hands. He sat on the edge of her bed, stroking her hair until her breathing evened out. Above them, glow-in-the-dark stars clung to the ceiling. Sarah had pasted them there 4 years ago. Some were peeling off, leaving adhesive ghosts. "I can't do this." It wasn't a scream. It was a quiet fact, heavy as stone. "I literally cannot do this anymore." He walked back to his office, sat down, opened his email client. He didn't write a 2-week notice. Didn't craft a polite lie about seeking new opportunities. His fingers moved across the keyboard with the certainty of a man who'd finally found solid ground. To Victoria Sterling, HR, Board of Directors. Subject, immediate resignation. "I quit. The encryption key is in the secure repository under folder Project Icarus. The password is 101-42021. That's the date my wife died. The only day I took off in 5 years. You called me 4 times during her funeral. 2:47 p.m. 3:15 e.m. 4:02 p.m. 5:38 p.m. I am done choosing you over my daughter. Don't contact me, Marcus Cole." He hit send, stared at the screen for a full minute. The terror hit first. Healthcare, rent, groceries. But it was immediately washed away by a tsunami of relief so potent he almost laughed. He closed the laptop, unplugged the router, walked into the living room, and collapsed onto the lumpy sofa. For the first time in years, he fell asleep without setting an alarm. 40 miles south, in a downtown Seattle penthouse that was all chrome and white leather and silence, Victoria Sterling read the email on her phone. She froze, read it again. "The password is the date my wife died. You called me 4 times during her funeral." Her throat tightened. She scrolled up through her call log, hands moving on autopilot. October 14th, 2021. 4 outgoing calls to Marcus Cole between 2:47 p.m. and 5:38 p.m. A funeral. She'd called him during his wife's funeral. The stock ticker on her wall monitor flashed red. Pre-market trading showed Sterling Dynamics down 12%. Her phone buzzed with a text from the Vanguard Systems CEO, Arthur Vance. Encryption key still missing. "Emergency board vote at noon. You're out." She tried the password, 101-42021. Access denied. Her pulse hammered. She tried variations, 2021114. Access denied, 1014. Denied. He'd changed it. Or the system had locked. Either way, she had 4 hours until the board vote that would end her. She grabbed her trench coat, the one that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and headed for the door. Her driver, a massive man named Oakes, looked up from his tablet. "Where to, Miss Sterling?" "Queen Anne." She rattled off the address from the HR database. "And drive fast." The pounding wasn't in Marcus's dream. He jerked awake. Gray light filtered through the curtains. Late morning. The rain had intensified into a deluge that hammered the roof like judgment. Thud, thud, thud. Someone was trying to break down his front door. He scrambled up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. His watch read 10:15 a.m. Maya was still asleep, fever having knocked her into exhausted unconsciousness. He grabbed the baseball bat from the umbrella stand and moved to the door. "Who is it?" "Open the damn door, Miller." The voice was female, sharp as broken glass, imperious, a voice that commanded boardrooms and made grown men stutter in presentations. Marcus froze. No. He cracked the door, leaving the safety chain on. Standing on his rotting wooden porch, drenched in a trench coat that probably cost $4,000, was Victoria Sterling. She was terrifyingly beautiful, even soaking wet. Jet black hair plastered to pale skin, emphasizing the sharp angles of her cheekbones and piercing ice blue eyes. Behind her, a black Mercedes Maybach idled in his driveway, hazard lights blinking against the gray gloom. You unplugged your phone, not a question, an accusation. It's Cole. And I quit. Did you not get the email? It was pretty clear. The encryption key didn't work. She stepped closer to the crack in the door, rain streaming down her face. The date, it locked the system. Marcus blinked. Yes, it did. October 14th, 2021. It locked the system. Her voice rose, desperation cracking through the CEO veneer. The merger is stalled. The stock dropped 12% in pre-market trading. Vanguard is circling like sharks. If you don't fix this, I don't just lose the merger, Miller. I lose the company. Cole, and not my problem. He started to close the door. Victoria slammed her hand against the wood. It must have hurt, but she didn't flinch. I will sue you for breach of contract, negligence, corporate sabotage. I will bury you in so much litigation you won't be able to afford a goldfish, let alone raise a child. That hit a nerve. Anger flared hot and bright in Marcus's chest. He undid the chain and threw the door open, stepping onto the porch in his socks. You want to talk about my child? His voice was low, controlled, more dangerous than shouting. My daughter has a fever of 103. I am done with your threats, Victoria. You want the code? Fine. Come in. I'll type it in, and then you get the hell out of my house. Victoria looked stunned. She wasn't used to being yelled at. She was used to, yes, Miss Sterling. And right away, Miss Sterling. She stepped inside, shaking rain off like a wet cat. The living room was chaos. Toys scattered everywhere. Laundry piled on a chair. Half-eaten toast on the coffee table. It smelled of Vicks VapoRub and stale coffee. The complete opposite of her penthouse. The computer is this way. She followed, heels clicking loudly on hardwood. You live like this? It's called a home, Victoria. You should try it sometime. He sat down at his desk and booted up the rig. Plugged the internet back in. Notifications exploded onto the screen. Hundreds of missed calls. Slack messages, panicked emails from the dev team. He ignored them all and opened the terminal. October 14th. He typed 101-42021. Access denied. His frown deepened. He tried 202-11014. Access denied. I told you. Victoria stood behind him. He could smell her perfume. Something expensive and cold, like winter air and jasmine. You changed it last week during the security patch update. Marcus's mind raced. He'd been awake for 48 hours patching the kernel, sleep-deprived, running on caffeine and adrenaline. I don't remember. Victoria's voice went deadly quiet. Excuse me? I was awake for 48 hours patching the kernel. I don't remember what I set the failsafe to. Figure it out. Not a request. A command. Vanguard's CEO is calling for an emergency board vote at noon to oust me. If I don't have control of the IP by then, I'm out. Arthur Vance wants to strip Sterling Dynamics for parts. He'll fire the entire engineering department, including your friends. Marcus groaned. He hated that she was right. He couldn't let his team down, even if he hated her. Okay, I need to run a brute force recovery on my local cache to find the keystroke log. It's going to take an hour. Do it, Daddy! The small voice came from the hallway. Marcus spun around. Maya stood there, looking worse than before. She swayed slightly on bare feet. I threw up. Marcus was up instantly, but before he could reach her, Maya's knees buckled. Victoria moved. It was a blur of motion. For a woman in 4-inch heels, she was incredibly fast. She caught Maya just before the girl hit the floor, scooping her up into the expensive trench coat. She's burning up. Victoria's eyes went wide. The Ice Queen mask cracked. Marcus, she's really hot. I know, Marcus stammered, taking Maya from her. He felt the heat radiating off his daughter like she was made of fire. I need to get her to urgent care. The fever isn't breaking. He looked at the computer. He looked at Victoria. I have to go. The code can wait. The company dies at noon. My daughter might be dying now. The words came out like a roar. Silence hung in the room, heavy and suffocating. Victoria looked at the weeping child in Marcus's arms. She looked at the desperation in his eyes, the eyes of a father who'd already lost a wife and was terrified of losing the only thing he had left. She took a deep breath, pulled her phone out. My driver is outside. Her voice clipped back into professional mode, but something underneath it trembled. We take the Maybach. It's faster than whatever you drive. You work on the laptop in the car. We go to Seattle Children's. I know the chief of medicine. I sit on the donor board. She'll be seen immediately. Marcus stared at her. You do that? I need that code, Miller. She avoided his gaze. And you can't type if you're driving. But as she turned toward the door, Marcus caught something in her profile. A flicker of vulnerability, of recognition. Like she was seeing him, maybe for the first time, as something other than a malfunctioning toaster. Let's go. The interior of the Maybach was silent, save for the rhythmic thrum of wipers and the frantic clicking of Marcus's mechanical keyboard. The car tore down I-5, weaving through heavy Seattle traffic with a fluidity that suggested Oakes had done defensive driving courses. Marcus hunched over the laptop, screen illuminating his face in harsh blue light. Maya lay across the seat between them. To her head resting on a pillow Victoria had produced from a hidden compartment. She was asleep again, breathing shallow and raspy. 5 minutes to the shareholder meeting. Victoria wasn't looking at him. She stared out the window at the gray blur of the city, phone clutched in her hand like a weapon. Arthur Vance is already in the boardroom. He's telling them I'm incompetent. He's telling them the merger is dead. I'm trying. Marcus didn't look up. The brute force algorithm is stuck on the third sector. What do you mean stuck? I mean the password isn't just changed. The entire security architecture was rewritten. This wasn't me, Victoria. Marcus typed a command line furiously. I quit. I didn't nuke the system. Then who? Someone else was in the system last night around 3 a.m., just before I sent my email. Victoria went still. 3 o'clock a.m., and you were the only one with level 5 clearance. Me and you, they locked eyes. The tension in the car was thick enough to choke on. I didn't sabotage my own company, Miller, and I didn't do it either. So unless your driver is a secret hacker, we have a mole. Daddy, Maya whimpered, stirring. The anger drained out of Marcus instantly. He dropped one hand from the keyboard to stroke Maya's sweat-dampened hair. I'm here, little bit. We're almost there. It hurts. A tear leaked out of her closed eye. Victoria watched them. Watched the way Marcus's rough hand cupped the child's delicate face. Watched the absolute terror masked behind his calm voice. It was a kind of love she'd read about in books, but never seen in the Sterling household. Her father, the great founder, had loved the stock price. He hadn't loved her. She felt a strange pang in her chest, something sharp and unfamiliar. Oaks, her voice dropped an octave. Drive faster. Use the shoulder. Miss Sterling, that's illegal. I'll pay the ticket. Go. The car surged forward. I found it. Marcus whispered, eyes widening. The intrusion signature. It came from an external IP. They didn't just change the password. They embedded a logic bomb. If I unlock it with the wrong key, it deletes the source code. Everything. Can you disarm it? I need a root access override. I need your biometric key. The car screeched to a halt under the awning of Seattle Children's Hospital emergency bay. We're here. Marcus didn't move. He looked at the laptop, then at his daughter. He was being torn in half. Victoria didn't hesitate. She reached over, grabbed the laptop, shoved her thumb onto the biometric scanner. Beep. Access granted. Fix it. Then she opened her door, ran around to the other side, yanked open Marcus's door. Before he could react, Victoria unbuckled Maya. She lifted the 7-year-old into her arms. Maya was dead weight in feverish sleep, but Victoria held her tight against the trench coat, rain soaking her hair instantly. You finished the code. Victoria's voice cut through the downpour. I've got her. Sarah, you don't know her medical history. I know she has a fever and needs a doctor. She turned and sprinted toward the ER doors, heels clicking on wet pavement, carrying his daughter like she was the most valuable asset in the world. Marcus watched her go. He looked at the screen. The logic bomb was ticking down. He took a breath, typed the override command. Execute, restore. System, Vanguard. Hit enter. A green bar filled the screen. System restored. Encryption key reset. He pulled out his phone and dialed into the boardroom conference call just as the clock hit noon. The motion to remove Serafina Sterling as CEO is on the table. A deep, oily voice. Arthur Vance. She has lost control of the intellectual property. The merger is live. Marcus's voice shook with adrenaline. This is Marcus Cole, lead architect. The Vanguard port is open. The data is transferring. Check your screens. Silence on the line. Then gasps. It's there. The stock is rebounding. Miss Sterling will be joining you shortly. Marcus lied. She is currently handling a critical logistical issue. He hung up, threw the laptop onto the rich leather seat, ran into the hospital, but neither Marcus nor Victoria knew that in a Four Seasons penthouse suite 12 miles away, Arthur Kane was watching a live feed from a photographer's telephoto lens aimed at Marcus's kitchen window. The images on his tablet showed Victoria Sterling sitting in Marcus Cole's lap at 2 a.m., her arms around him, their faces inches apart. Arthur smiled, uploaded the photos to a secure server, scheduled them for publication in 48 hours. By then, it wouldn't matter that the merger had been saved. By then, Serafina Sterling would be destroyed. The hospital room on the 4th floor smelled of antiseptic and floor wax, a smell Marcus associated with the worst day of his life, the day Sarah died. But today, it smelled different. Today, it smelled like hope. Maya was tucked into a hospital bed, looking tiny beneath white sheets, an IV line taped to her small hand. The heart monitor beeped steady and reassuring. Her fever had broken an hour ago. Bacterial pneumonia, caught early. Antibiotics already working through her system. Victoria stood by the window, staring out at the gray skyline. Her trench coat draped over a chair, drying. The silk blouse she wore underneath was ruined, stained with rain and a smudge of Maya's vomit on the shoulder. She hadn't changed it. hadn't even seemed to notice. Marcus walked to the bed and kissed Maya's forehead. She was cooler now, almost normal. "Thank you." Victoria turned. The makeup was smudged under her eyes. For the first time, she looked like a human being instead of a corporate deity. "You saved the company. You saved my daughter." Victoria walked over and sat on the edge of the windowsill. "Now we need to talk about who sabotaged the system." Marcus pulled the plastic chair closer to Maya's bed, positioned so he could see both his daughter and Victoria. The logic bomb had a signature. Old code. Fortran. Nobody uses Fortran anymore unless they've been in the industry for 40 years. Victoria's face went pale. "Arthur." Marcus nodded. "Arthur Kane. He started as a coder in the 80s, didn't he? Your father's partner before the falling out. He waited for me to crack." Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. "He knew I was burnt out. He knew about Maya. He used your grief, your situation, to make it look like a disgruntled employee's revenge." She stood up, walked toward the door. Her shoulders squared, CEO armor sliding back into place. "I'm going to kill him." Marcus moved faster, blocked her path. "Stop. You're smart. You're Victoria. You're the smartest person I know. But you're emotional right now. If you go after him without evidence, he wins. He's been playing this game longer than us." Victoria looked up at him. The distance between them was negligible. He could see the flecks of gold in her ice blue eyes, could feel the heat of her skin. "So what do? We work together." Marcus's voice was steady. "I'm not your employee anymore. I'm not doing this for a paycheck. I'm doing this because that man tried to frame me and jeopardized my daughter's safety by keeping me occupied while she was sick." "You're retracting your resignation?" "No. I'm never working 18-hour days again. I'm never missing another recital. If I come back, it's on my terms. Consultant, remote. And I leave when Maya needs me. No questions asked." Victoria stared at him. What, the old Victoria would have laughed him out of the room. The old Victoria would have fired him for insubordination. But the old Victoria hadn't held a sick child in her arms while racing through rain. Deal. The moment stretched, charged with something new. Not just a business agreement, an alliance. 3 days later, the headquarters of Sterling Dynamics had effectively relocated to Marcus's dining room table. It was a strange sight. The table, usually covered in crayon drawings and unpaid bills, was now a command center. High-end monitors, encrypted servers, half-eaten boxes of pizza. Victoria had been working remotely to avoid Arthur Kane's spies at the office. She sat on one of Marcus's rickety wooden chairs, wearing a cashmere sweater and yoga pants, an outfit Marcus hadn't realized she even owned. "You have tomato sauce on your chin." Victoria wiped furiously with a napkin, not looking up from her screen. "I do not. I am a precision eater." "Right. Just like you're a precision parker. Your Honda blocked my neighbor's driveway again. His Civic was encroaching on my territory." Marcus chuckled. The sound felt foreign in this house, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. He watched her for a moment. The iron CEO eating pepperoni pizza and hacking into shell corporations in his kitchen was surreal. But the most surreal part wasn't the work. It was Maya. Miss Victoria. Victoria froze mid-bite. She was still terrified of breaking the child. Maya walked up to her, clutching Mr. Hops. The rabbit's ear hung loose again. "Yes, Maya?" Mr. Hops has a loose ear again. Daddy can't sew. He makes it look like a Frankenstein bunny. Marcus feigned offense from across the table. Hey, that is structural stitching. Victoria hesitated. Then she set down her tablet, looked at the plush rabbit with the same intensity she applied to corporate mergers. I took a home economics class in boarding school. Once. She took the rabbit. Her long, manicured fingers, usually signing million-dollar contracts, deftly threaded a needle from Marcus's sewing kit. She worked with surgical precision, tongue between her teeth in concentration. 5 minutes later, she handed it back. The stitch was invisible. Perfect. Thank you. Maya beamed. Then she threw her arms around Victoria's neck. Victoria went rigid. Her eyes widened. She held her hands up awkwardly, looking at Marcus for help. Marcus just smiled, leaning against the counter with crossed arms. You can hug her back, you know. She won't bite. Victoria slowly lowered her arms, wrapped them tentatively around the small girl. She closed her eyes for a brief second, exhaling a breath she seemed to have been holding for years. When she opened them, she looked at Marcus. The vulnerability in her gaze hit him like a physical weight. Okay. Victoria cleared her throat, gently detaching Maya. Back to business. Did the tracer program finish? Marcus sat down next to her. Their knees brushed under the table. The contact made it hard to focus. Yeah, it finished. He turned the monitor so she could see. Arthur Kane didn't just sabotage the code. He's been siphoning money from the R&D budget for 18 months, funneling it into a shell company called Obsidian Corp. Obsidian? Victoria almost laughed. That sounds like a bad villain lair. It gets worse. Look at the IP address for the transfer protocols. Victoria leaned in, her shoulder pressed against his arm. She smelled different now. Not cold jasmine. Rain and vanilla. That IP. She gasped. That's the guest Wi-Fi at the Four Seasons, where Arthur's been living. He was stealing from you while ordering room service. We have him. A fierce, predatory grin spread across Victoria's face. This is embezzlement. Corporate espionage. I can fire him. I can have him arrested. We need to download the full ledger before he realizes we're inside. It'll take all night to decrypt. Victoria looked at him. Then we stay up all night. I'm not going anywhere, Marcus. The air in the kitchen shifted, from collegiate to intimate. The silence stretched, heavy with unsaid things. I'll put a pot of coffee on. Good. Victoria's gaze dropped to his lips for a fraction of a second. I have a feeling we're going to need the energy. The rain in Seattle never really stops. It just changes texture. By 2 a.m, it was a soft, rhythmic drumming against the kitchen window. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with the hum of cooling fans and the scent of stale pizza. Marcus rubbed his eyes. The blue light of the monitors stung his retinas. Across the table, Victoria had pulled her legs up onto the chair, wrapping her arms around her knees. The oversized Sterling Dynamics hoodie Marcus had lent her swallowed her frame. She looked less like a corporate titan and more like a graduate student pulling an all-nighter. You're tired. Go take the couch. I'll monitor the brute force script. I'm not tired. She lied, though her eyelids were heavy. I need to see it happen. I need to be here when we catch him. She reached for her lukewarm coffee, grimaced, drank it anyway. Tell me something. Marcus leaned back in his creaky wooden chair. Why didn't you just fire him years ago? Arthur Kane. You knew he was a snake. Victoria traced the rim of her mug. Because he was my father's friend. When my dad died, Arthur was the one who handed me the gavel. He told the board I was ready when everyone else said I was just a nepotism hire. I thought, she paused, looked down at the scarred wood of the table. I thought he was the only family I had left. Marcus looked at her. He saw the loneliness that lived beneath the couture suits and the terrifying reputation. He realized that for all her wealth, Victoria Sterling was perhaps the poorest person he'd ever met. She had money, power, and fear. But she had no one who would stitch a rabbit's ear back on for her. Family isn't about blood, Victoria, and it definitely isn't about board seats. Family is the people who show up when the fever hits 103. Victoria looked up. Her ice blue eyes locked with his. The air in the kitchen shifted again. The data scrolling on the screen seemed to fade into the background. You tried to quit. Her whisper was almost lost in the rain's drumming. 3 days ago, you hated me. I didn't hate you. I hated the job. I hated that the job was taking me away from Maya. But seeing you with her, seeing you here... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Victoria leaned forward. Her hand moved across the table, hesitating before her fingers brushed against his knuckles. Her skin was cool. His was warm. The contact sent electricity through Marcus that had nothing to do with the server voltage. I've never had this. Victoria's voice trembled. A kitchen. A mess. Safety. You could have it. The moment hung there, fragile and terrifying. Two people from different galaxies colliding in a rented kitchen. Beep. The sharp electronic chirp shattered the silence. Both of them jumped. Marcus spun toward the main monitor. A green progress bar was flashing. We're in. Victoria scrambled off her chair, rounding the table to stand next to him. She leaned over his shoulder, breath hitching. Show me. Marcus's fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard. Okay, Arthur. Let's see where you buried the bodies. He executed the query. The screen filled with a cascading list of bank transfers. Look at the dates. Marcus pointed, a finger tracing the lines. Every time there was a critical security patch that delayed a product launch, there was a deposit. Obsidian Corp Cayman Islands. He's been bleeding us dry for 18 months. Victoria read the destination accounts. That's $43 million. He wasn't just stealing. Marcus scrolled down, realization dawning. He was shorting the stock. He'd cause a glitch. The stock would drop. He'd buy in low through Obsidian, then wait for us to fix it. He was betting against his own company. Victoria's voice hardened into steel. He was betting against me. We have him. Marcus hit the download key. This is the smoking gun, the bullet, and the fingerprints all in one. Victoria let out a laugh. Pure, unadulterated relief. Without thinking, she threw her arms around Marcus's neck. Marcus spun the chair and caught her. For a second, she was in his lap, her face inches from his. The victory, the exhaustion, the intimacy, it all crashed together. Thank you, she whispered against his forehead. We make a good team. Victoria pulled back slightly, searching his face. Maybe we do. She didn't move away. They stayed like that, the rain drumming outside, the servers humming, simply breathing in the shared air of survival. Eventually, exhaustion won. Victoria rested her head on Marcus's shoulder. Marcus rested his chin on her hair. They fell asleep right there in the chair, guarding the evidence. The morning sun didn't ask for permission. It just invaded. Marcus woke with a stiff neck and a numb left arm. The kitchen was bathed in pale gray morning light. The rain had finally stopped, it leaving the world outside wet and glistening. He shifted and realized Victoria was still asleep against him, her breathing deep and even, She looked younger in the daylight, sharp features softened by sleep. He didn't want to move. He wanted to stay in this suspended reality where the CEO of Sterling Dynamics was just a woman sleeping in his arms. But the world outside had other plans. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Marcus's phone, face down on the table, began to vibrate violently. Then Victoria's phone, plugged into the wall charger, began to chime. Then the landline in the hallway. Victoria jerked awake. What? What time is it? It's 7 a.m. Marcus reached for his phone. Who is calling at... He froze. The screen was filled with notifications. Texts from friends he hadn't spoken to in years. Emails from reporters. A Google alert that made his stomach drop through the floor. Breaking the boardroom bedroom. Serafina Sterling's secret affair exposed. Don't. Marcus's voice was sharp as Victoria reached for her phone. Victoria, you don't want to see this. Give it to me. She snatched the phone from his hand. Marcus watched the color drain from her face, leaving her ghostly pale. Oh my God. It was a hit piece. A masterpiece of destruction. The article, published by a notorious financial tabloid, painted a lurid picture. While Sterling Dynamics stock plummeted and thousands of employees feared for their jobs, CEO Serafina Sterling was shacked up in a suburban rental with disgraced lead architect Marcus Cole. There were photos, grainy telephoto lens shots. One showed Victoria entering Marcus's house 3 days ago, looking disheveled in the rain. Another showed them in the Maybach, heads close together as they worked on code, but it looked intimate. The worst one was from last night. Taken through the gap in the kitchen curtains, Victoria sitting in Marcus's lap, her arms around him. The caption read, "Golden parachutes and lovers' embraces." Is this the end of the Sterling legacy? He was watching us. Victoria's voice shook. Arthur. He didn't just hack the system. He had someone watching the house. He's controlling the narrative. Marcus scanned the text. He's claiming I sabotaged the code to extort the company, and that I seduced you to cover my tracks. He's painting you as a victim of your own lust. He's destroying my credibility. Victoria stood up, pacing the small kitchen. The board meeting is at 9 a.m. If they see this, they won't even look at the evidence. They'll dismiss me for moral turpitude before I can open my mouth. We have the ledger. Who cares about a tabloid article when we have proof of embezzlement? Everyone cares, Marcus. She spun around. Tears were welling in her eyes. This isn't about facts. It's about optics. A female CEO caught sleeping with a subordinate during a crisis. It's a death sentence. The stock is already down another 8% in pre-market. Thump, thump, thump. Heavy pounding on the front door. Miss Sterling, we know you're in there. A voice shouted from outside. Do you have a comment on the resignation rumors? Marcus walked to the living room window and peeked through the blinds. It's a zoo. At least 10 reporters on his lawn, trampling the azaleas he'd tried so hard to keep alive. Cameras pointed at every window. A news van blocking the driveway. I have to go. Victoria was grabbing her things, her purse, her keys, shedding the comfortable hoodie and pulling her ruined silk blouse back on, putting the armor back in place. What? No, you can't go out there. I have to distance myself from you. Her voice was frantic. If I leave now, I can issue a statement. I can say I was here for business. I can say you're just a consultant. Victoria, stop. Marcus grabbed her arm. Let me go, Marcus. She tried to pull away, but he held fast. Don't you get it? I'm poison. I bring this chaos wherever I go. Look at your life. You were a quiet, normal dad. And now you have paparazzi on your lawn and your face on the internet. I am destroying you. You're not destroying me. I am. I'm dangerous to be around. My father was right. I ruin things." She looked at him. "I'm pleading. I can't let Arthur win, and I can't let him drag you down with me. You have Maya to think about." At the mention of his daughter's name, Marcus stiffened. He looked toward the hallway. Maya was still asleep, miraculously sleeping through the shouting outside. He looked back at Victoria. She was trembling, terrified not of losing the money, but of hurting him. "You're right," Marcus said slowly. "I do have Maya to think about." Victoria slumped. The fight drained out of her. "I'll tell the press I fired you. It'll clear your name. You can go back to being—" "I'm not finished," Marcus interrupted, voice dropping an octave. "I have Maya to think about. And you know what I teach her? I teach her that you don't run away from bullies, and you don't leave your friends behind in the mud." He let go of her arm and walked to the counter. Tom picked up the hard drive containing the Obsidian ledger, picked up his phone. "What are you doing?" "I'm calling Oaks to bring the car around the back alley. To take me to the office?" "No." Marcus pulled on his jacket. "To take us to the office." "Marcus, you can't walk into that boardroom. You're the disgraced lover. They'll laugh you out of the building." Marcus turned to her. He looked at the chaos outside, then back at the woman who had sat on his floor and sewed a stuffed rabbit. "Let them laugh. Arthur Kane thinks he's playing a game of PR. He thinks this is about headlines. But he forgot one thing." "What?" "He forgot that I built the system he's trying to steal, and I know exactly how to burn it down around him." Marcus's eyes were cold, dangerous, fiercely protective. "I'm not going as your boyfriend, Victoria, and I'm not going as your employee." He held up the hard drive. "I'm going as a whistleblower, and I'm bringing the federal government with me." Victoria stared at him. For the first time in days, the fear in her eyes was replaced by something else. A spark. A reflection of his own fire. "Go wake up Maya." Marcus took charge in a way no one had ever dared to with Serafina Sterling. "Pack a bag. We're going to a meeting." The back alley behind Marcus's house smelled like wet concrete and garbage. Oaks had pulled the Maybach up to the fence gate, engine idling. Maya sat in the back seat, wrapped in her yellow raincoat, clutching Mr. Hops. Her eyes were wide with the kind of excitement only a 7-year-old could muster at 7:30 in the morning. "Daddy, where are we going?" "To help Miss Victoria with something important." "On the bad man who made you sad?" "Yes, baby, but we're fixing it." Maya looked at the stuffed rabbit in her hands. "Like you fixed Mr. Hops?" "Exactly like that." Victoria slid into the seat next to Maya. She'd changed into a fresh blouse from an emergency kit in the car, reapplied makeup, put the CEO mask back on. But when Maya reached over and took her hand, Victoria didn't let go. Marcus sat in the front passenger seat, laptop open on his knees. He pulled up a secure email client and typed rapidly. "Who are you contacting?" "Securities and Exchange Commission." Marcus didn't look up. "I have a friend from MIT who works in their fraud division. We're going to need federal backup if we want this to stick." "You have friends in the SEC?" "I have friends everywhere, Victoria. You just never bothered to ask." He hit send. Why, then he made a second call. This one to a reporter at the Seattle Times. Someone who owed him a favor from 3 years ago when Marcus had helped expose a data breach at a local hospital. The reporter answered on the second ring. Marcus spoke for 90 seconds, gave him the broad strokes, Embezzlement, stock manipulation, evidence ready to present. When he hung up, Victoria was staring at him. What? You're not just a systems architect, are you? Marcus turned in his seat to face her. I'm a father who's tired of being underestimated, and I'm done letting people like Arthur Kane hurt the people I care about. The car pulled onto the street. The reporters at the front of Marcus's house didn't even notice the Maybach slipping away through the alley. Inside the car, the silence was heavy with anticipation. Maya hummed softly to herself, oblivious to the magnitude of what was about to happen. Victoria looked out the window at the passing city. Her city. The one her father had built his empire in. Tomorrow morning, everything changes. Marcus's voice was quiet, but certain. Victoria reached across the center console and took his hand. I know. The conference room on the 40th floor of Sterling Dynamics Tower was hermetically sealed against the storm outside, but the atmosphere inside was turbulent enough to shatter the glass. 12 board members sat around the mahogany table like a jury at a sentencing. At the head sat Arthur Kane, smoothing his expensive silk tie with the satisfied air of a man who'd already won. At the other end sat Victoria Sterling, small, defeated, hands folded in her lap, knuckles white. When the motion is on the floor, Arthur's voice dripped with faux sympathy. To remove Serafina Sterling as CEO due to gross misconduct and negligence. We have the photographs. We have the falling stock prices. It is regrettable, but necessary. Just sign the papers, Arthur. Victoria's voice was quiet. I'll resign. Just leave the staff out of it. Oh, the staff will be restructured regardless. Arthur smiled. Efficiency, my dear. Now, all in favor? Hands began to rise. 1, 2, 5. Arthur raised his own hand. That's majority. The double doors didn't open. They flew open, hitting the stops with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. Every head turned. Marcus Cole stood in the doorway, wearing jeans and a wet hoodie. And holding his hand, in a bright yellow raincoat and clutching a stitched-up rabbit, was Maya. Security. Arthur barked, I was standing up. Who let this man in? I let myself in. Marcus's voice was calm but projected to every corner of the room. And I brought the SEC with me. They're downstairs right now, seizing the server room. But I told them to give me 5 minutes first. He walked into the room. Didn't look at Victoria. Not yet. He walked straight to Arthur Kane, pulled the hard drive from his pocket, and slammed it onto the polished wood. Because of Obsidian Corp. Arthur's face went the color of old ash. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Marcus hooked the hard drive up to the presentation cable in the center of the table. The massive screen behind Arthur flickered to life. It wasn't a PowerPoint. It was a bank ledger. This is a transaction log. Marcus addressed the board, not Arthur. For 18 months, all code patches were authorized by Arthur Kane. Every time a patch went live, 0.5% of the operating budget was diverted to a shell account in the Cayman Islands under the name Obsidian. Lines of code scrolled on the screen, red numbers, $43 million. And here, Marcus pointed to a specific line, is the timestamp for the logic bomb that nearly destroyed this company 3 days ago. It was authorized from IP address 192.168.1.14. He tapped a key. A map appeared. That is the Wi-Fi network of the Four Seasons penthouse suite where Mr. Kane is currently residing. The room was dead silent. The only sound was the hum of the projector. Arthur laughed. It was a nervous, brittle sound. This is absurd. This man is a disgruntled employee. He's the one sleeping with the CEO. He fabricated this. Marcus finally turned to look at Victoria. She was staring at him with wide, watery eyes, her hand covering her mouth. Marcus looked back at the board. "You want to talk about the affair?" He reached down and picked up Maya. She was intimidated by the suits, burying her face in his neck. "My daughter had pneumonia." Marcus's voice broke slightly. "I was a single father with no help, drowning in work, about to quit because I couldn't take care of her. Victoria Sterling didn't seduce me. She drove my sick child to the hospital in her own car. She sat in a plastic chair in the ER for 3 hours. She sewed the ear back on this rabbit because my daughter was crying." Marcus looked around the table, meeting the eyes of every board member. She didn't act like a CEO. She acted like a leader. And more importantly, she acted like a human being. While Arthur Kane was trying to burn this company to the ground for a payout, Victoria was saving my family. He paused. Let the words sink in. "So you tell me, who do you want running this company? This is preposterous." Arthur lunged for the laptop. "Turn it off. Sit down, Arthur." The chairman of the board, a gray-haired woman named Eleanor Chen, stood up. Her voice was steel. "Security. Please escort Mr. Kane to the lobby. The federal agents are waiting for him." 2 large guards stepped in. Arthur Kane, the man who tried to steal everything, was dragged out, shouting legal threats that nobody listened to. When the doors closed, the silence returned. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It was the silence of a storm passing. Eleanor turned to Victoria. "Serafina, I believe we have a vote to rescind." Victoria stood up. She walked over to Marcus. She didn't care about the board, didn't care about decorum. She looked at Maya, then at Marcus. "You stayed." Marcus smiled, exhausted but light. "Running won't fix this. We fight together, or we lose everything." Victoria didn't hesitate this time. In front of the board, in front of the giant screen still showing the evidence of their victory, she stepped forward and kissed him. It wasn't a Hollywood kiss. It was desperate and real and tasted like rain and coffee. When they pulled apart, Maya tugged on Victoria's sleeve. "Miss Victoria, can we go home now?" "I'm hungry." Victoria laughed. A genuine, bright laugh that startled the board members. "Yes, Maya. Let's go home." Meeting adjourned. 3 months passed like a held breath finally released. The news coverage had been relentless at first. The headlines scrolling across every financial network. Sterling Dynamics CFO arrested, $43 million embezzlement scheme. SEC launches, multi-state corporate fraud investigation, whistleblower Marcus Cole. Testifies before Senate committee. The DOJ had moved fast. Arthur Kane's arrest had triggered a cascade. 73 other companies subpoenaed for pension fund schemes that traced back to shell corporations in the Cayman Islands. A web of fraud that had been operating for 6 years, bleeding tech companies dry while shorting their stock. Arthur Kane was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. The recovered funds from Obsidian Corp., $127 million total, were distributed back to the 73 families whose retirement accounts had been systematically drained. Sterling Dynamics implemented new policies. 6 months paid parental leave, $3,000 monthly childcare stipend, and what the staff had started calling the Marcus Cole Work-Life Protection Clause. No work contact after 6 p.m. unless the building was literally on fire. Victoria had been named Forbes CEO of the Year for corporate ethics reform. The stock had rebounded to all-time highs, but none of that mattered as much as what happened in Marcus's kitchen on a Sunday morning in early spring. The Queen Anne house looked different now. The peeling paint had been touched up, courtesy of a contractor Victoria had insisted on hiring. The overgrown lawn was now a manicured garden, maintained by Oakes, who it turned out had a passion for horticulture and a gentle hand with roses. Inside, the kitchen was still messy, but it was a happy mess. Marcus sat at the table, up typing on his laptop. Not coding until 4 a.m., just working his contracted hours as Chief Technology Officer of Sterling Dynamics, a role that allowed him to work from home 4 days a week. The back door opened. "I'm home." Victoria walked in, wearing jeans and a Sterling Dynamics hoodie that was 2 sizes too big for her. She wasn't coming from the office. She was coming from Maya's school, where she'd volunteered to help with the science fair. She kissed the top of Marcus's head. "How's the new encryption protocol?" "Solid as a rock. How was the science fair?" "Your daughter built a volcano that actually worked." Victoria went to the fridge and pulled out a juice box. "The principal is still finding baking soda on the ceiling." "Daddy, Victoria." Maya ran into the room, wearing a tutu and rain boots. A fashion statement she'd been insisting on for weeks. She was holding a piece of construction paper. "Look." She held up a drawing. 3 stick figures. One tall with glasses, Marcus. One with long black hair, Victoria. One small, holding a rabbit, Maya. They were standing in front of a house. Above them, in careful crayon letters, she'd written, "Family." Victoria stared at the drawing. Her throat tightened. She had spent her whole life building skyscrapers and fortunes, thinking that was what a legacy looked like. She thought power was the only thing that kept you safe. She looked at Marcus, the man who had challenged her, fought for her, loved her when she had nothing left but a title. She looked at Maya, the little girl who had taught her how to stitch a heart back together. This drawing, this was the only legacy that mattered. It's perfect, little bit. Victoria's voice was thick with emotion. "We're going to put this right on the fridge, right in the middle." Marcus agreed, pulling Victoria onto his lap. Outside, the Seattle rain began to fall again, but it wasn't punishing anymore. It was gentle. A soft tapping against the window like a reminder that storms always pass. Inside, it was warm. The coffee was hot. The glow-in-the-dark stars on Maya's ceiling, the ones Sarah had pasted there 4 years ago, were still visible through the doorway. Some had fallen. Some were peeling. But Maya didn't need them anymore. She had something better. She had them. Victoria looked at the drawing on the fridge, held in place by a magnet shaped like a rabbit. She thought about her father, who had built an empire but died alone in a hospital room with only his lawyer present. She thought about Arthur Kane, who had tried to steal that empire and now sat in a federal prison cell, his own legacy reduced to a cautionary tale in business school textbooks. And she thought about Marcus, who had quit his job with an email sent at 4 a.m, thinking his career was over. Instead, he'd changed everything. Not just for her. Not just for Maya. For 73 families who got their retirement back. For thousands of employees who now had parental leave. For a system that had been bleeding talent dry. One 18-hour day at a time. Marcus's voice pulled her back to the present. "What are you thinking about?" Victoria smiled. "How lucky I am that you didn't know how to remember a password." Marcus laughed. "I'm best system failure of my life." Maya tugged on both their sleeves. "Can we have pancakes now?" Victoria stood up, pulled Maya into her arms. "Absolutely. But I'm making them this time. Your dad burns them. I do not, Marcus protested, standing up to grab the mixing bowl. That's called caramelization. That's called setting off the smoke alarm. Their laughter filled the kitchen, warm and alive and real. Outside, the rain continued its gentle drumming. The city stretched out beyond the window, gray and green and glistening. A city full of other families, other struggles, other quiet revolutions happening in kitchens just like this one. But in this kitchen, on this Sunday morning, 3 people stood around a counter making pancakes. Not a CEO, not a whistleblower, not even a little girl with a gap-toothed smile. Just a family, one the kind that shows up when the fever hits 103, the kind that sews rabbit ears, the kind that stays,